I would want to hear more from Will on what he meant by my religion is love, because I
Sure.
could so easily hear a Christian saying the same thing. If we're giving it the right parameters, right? If what we mean by love being our religion is that like God has called us to
Sure.
love him and to
Sure.
love others, yes and amen. What is up, everyone? We are back with another episode of Shaping the Culture. Shaping the Code. What is up, everyone? We are back with another episode of Shaping the Culture podcast. We hope that all is well with you all, family. Listen, today we're doing something a little different. We are going to react to a conversation that Will Smith had with Lecrae. I'm going to preface this whole thing by saying we are no heresy hunters. We are no haters. I'm a big fan of both those guys, and I'm here to just have a good old time. And I will not be here by myself today. The man, the myth, the legend, the man who's usually behind the camera is joining us with us.
I am.
We've got the one and only Mr. Thibodeau with us.
What's happening?
How you doing, sir?
I'm chilling, man. It's been a long week. I'm ready for the weekend. You know what I'm saying? But I'm here for a good time. We're gonna have fun.
We're gonna laugh.
Of course.
Give some insights.
Of course.
Share some nuggets.
Obvious.
Give the gospel.
I mean, if we have to ask, you know what I'm saying? That's if nothing else, shaping the culture. You gonna get the gospel.
We're gonna get the gospel.
You know what I'm saying?
At some point. I love it. Well, here's what I'll say. I think these conversations are so important. Shaping the Culture podcast, this is literally our heartbeat. We want to be in culture, shaping culture in a way that honors God and brings good to society, good to culture. And I really do believe as you honor God and glorify God, we benefit. All of us benefit when God is magnified. And so, and I really appreciate this. Man, Lecrae is doing it at a level that so many of us, maybe not so many of us, I know for me personally, I just really appreciate, and something that if the Lord ever does for our platform, we would rejoice over. Ever since I was young, I've always wanted to be in culture to have these kind of conversations. And I just want to, I remember when Lecrae actually had Nick Cannon come on the deep end. I just really loved the conversation. I actually reached out to him. I DM'd him, and I had told him how I respected the way he moved in conversation. And I don't feel like we're not having enough of these conversations. One, he was offering feedback. You could tell Lecrae's response, questions, curiosity was informed by his faith, but at the same time, he was not overdoing it. He was not Jesus juking. He was a light in the conversation, and Nick Cannon didn't have to wonder where Lecrae stood or where he stands. I mean, that's pretty obvious, but like they were, he humanized Nick Cannon by the way in which he showed up in the conversation. I think that's powerful. I think it's C.S. Lewis who said, I believe in God the way I believe in the sun. And I don't only believe in the sun because I can see the sun, but I believe in the sun because by the sun I could see all things, right? So this idea that the sun gives sunshine and light, and because of the sun, we can drive, we can walk, we can go out to eat, we can grab coffee, right? The sun affords us the ability to see everything else properly. And C.S. Lewis saying in the same way, like I don't just believe in God because I could see God, but in seeing God, I see everything else clearly. And I think sometimes, the way you show up in conversation, the way you show up in culture isn't just by talking about God, but talking about the way you see the world. And in the way you talk about the way you see the world, it's pretty obvious. Like you have you have a worldview, you have a thought process, you have an inspiration, you have something that's instructing the way you're processing everything around you. And I think that as Christians, we got to be better at that. I think a lot of us Christian content creators, we're really good at talking theology. We're really good about talking about God. We're really good about talking Bible, and I think that's needed. And I think we need more of that. I feel like we don't actually have enough of it. And Shaping the Culture podcast, we aim to continue to do that. But in addition to all of that, I think we also have to show up in conversations around culture and fame and success and money in a way that reflects our worldview, reflects what the Bible teaches, but isn't always explicitly quoting scripture, isn't always quoting the word, isn't always quoting the Bible. And so that's kind of what I'm excited about. I think Lecrae killed it, dog. He killed it. It was phenomenal. He was comfortable. You can tell in that conversation that wasn't their first interaction, and you could tell Cray was actually very comfortable with Will, and Will was very comfortable with Lecrae. And it was fun seeing the banter. It was fun. I mean, I think at one point, Lecrae called out Will for saying Daniel in the whale instead of Jonah in the whale, which was funny. I caught it, and I was like, I wonder what's gonna happen here. But like, it was funny to see Lecrae call it out, and I loved how Will responded to it. It was very reflective of where Will is on his journey altogether. And so, 10 out of 10, highly recommend it. But yeah, Parker and I, we're just gonna respond. We're just gonna talk about things that we observed, things that we saw, things we want to highlight, things we want to champion, things we want to give our own opinion on, right? It's like we're the cousins and nobody invited to the conversation. Well, we're gonna have our take. But yeah, any other thoughts on that, Parker, before we dive in?
Something I did think about, like there's a quote in a record that Swoop was on, and he said, hold on, I had it pulled up.
Pull it up. We also want to see you on the camera.
Oh, my fault. Habits. He said, if Christ is the light, then that's what we believe. I can talk about light and what light helps me see. And so just to your point, I think like I was even talking to somebody a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
About like when we have like events at church or different things like that. And they were like, oh, should we have like a devotional or a time for prayer? I was like, we can. But I mean, like also that's a part of who we are. And so in our conversation, like we're going to talk about, how's your week? How are you struggling? How are you dealing with that? How can I pray for you? Why are you thinking this? Like just as a part of like who we are, it's an overflow of our relationship with the Lord that like impacts everything else. So there's a time and a place to have structured devotional sermon, critique, feedback, rebuke, whatever. Right. But there's also just like, we can also just enjoy what there is. And out of like our relationship, that gets woven into how we're doing those things. You know what I'm saying?
That's good. Yeah. And people got to realize, I feel like, this is a podcast episode. This is not the pulpit.
Yeah.
This is a dialogue, not a monologue. And I think that it's a great example of how to show up in conversation as a believer. Yeah. Be distinct in what you believe, for sure. Be distinct in how you respond and how you think. But man, lead with curiosity. Yeah. Lead with questions. Understand the individual, call out things. I think, it was powerful. So shout out to you, Craig. By the way, we haven't had Lecrae on the pod since 2020. We got to get that man back on, bro. Lecrae, I don't think he'll ever see this, but brother, we need
don't
you.
Do that, man. Stop this.
we got to get you back on the pod, brother. We miss you.
We got to call, what's his manager? Flex.
Hit me, Flex. Talk to me, dog. Yeah. So we're gonna react. So we're gonna let some things play. And then we'll give our honest feedback. So here's the first clip I want to play.
I did die, right? And I think that is the top human skill set, a willingness to die, a willingness to let go.
Let go. Yeah.
That thing's not serving you anymore.
Yeah.
Let it go.
Yeah.
That relationship's not serving you. That job's not serving you. That circumstance is not serving you. A willingness to feel what it feels like to die the death of the loss of that thing, trusting yourself and God to create the new thing.
Yeah.
That's
you're like, for me, you're like the closest picture to a person embodying the ancient Jewish text of Ecclesiastes. A person who's like, I've experienced it all. Yep. I've seen it all. I've done it all. And it didn't really do what I thought it was gonna do. It didn't define me the way that I thought it would. And so I'm gonna just tell you this. And I think that takes a lot of courage, because
Well, first of all, people don't want to hear it. So you know how most people end up, they try to talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, and it's like, it is such a rare gift to reach the end of the material world.
Elaborate.
Right.
Talk about that.
To reach the end of money. To get to the point where you can buy anything you want and you sit in your house and there's nothing else to buy. Whereas buying things used to like scratch an itch.
Yeah.
And now there's nothing else to buy, right? To hit the end of the material world, right? You know, to have had all the sex that you want to have. And
I read the book.
Yeah, and it's
you did a lot of things.
Yeah, you get to the end of that, right? How many more #1 movies do I need? How many more Grammys do I need, right? And it is such a rare gift to get to the end of the material world in the place where only God is left, right? And it's like, it's interesting. I think we may have talked about this before. Yeah, we talked about this before, where people usually do that when they hit rock bottom. But there's a corresponding place to rock bottom that I call cliff top, where you actually pop out of the top of the material world and there's nothing left here. Like, and you have to, inward is the only place left.
Yeah.
There's no country you can go to. There's no new relationship you can start. There's no job that's going to do it. There's nothing. You even, you get to the end of it. And it's like, it's excruciating, but I would wish that on everybody. I wish everybody could have everything they want.
To see.
It
doesn't satisfy.
Doesn't satisfy.
Yeah.
And
sheesh. That's a word. I think it was Jim Carrey who said, I wish that everybody could be rich and famous just to see that, like, there's nothing here, right? There's nothing about being rich and famous is satisfying. And shout out to Lecrae. I think like it was powerful for him to bring up King Solomon in Ecclesiastes. King Solomon eventually says that everything is meaningless.
Yeah.
And, he says life is like a vapor, right? It's like a mist. Here today, gone tomorrow. And I like this because what Will Smith is speaking to is this idea that, we weren't made to live for materialism. We weren't made to live for a house, for a car, for flights and vacations and beaches and getting the latest shoes and buying the latest clothes. And King Solomon, I think he's misunderstood a lot. I think sometimes when they read Ecclesiastes, we read that and we say, well, maybe we shouldn't enjoy those things, or maybe we shouldn't pursue those things, or maybe there isn't any joy in those things. And I don't think that's what he's saying. I think what he's saying is that these things were made to be enjoyed. They weren't made to be worshiped. They were made to, pleasure is good. We just shouldn't worship pleasure, right? And I think that Will is speaking to this idea, like, yeah, like I've received it all, I've done it all, I've accomplished it all, I've made all the money, there's nothing left for me to buy, and yet and still my soul is still itching for more. And I think that it's only problematic when you're looking to the money, when you're looking to success, when you're looking to the vacations to take the place of God. And I think that so many of us spend time chasing the wind. We spend time chasing things that will not satisfy, right? And so what I love about this conversation is they're not against success. They're not against making money. They're not, but what they're saying is like, yeah, this is great. It just doesn't, I got to a point where I'm left with nothing. And now I've got to look inward. Now I got to go to God, right? Because Will Smith came to the realization that this is not going to do it for him. And so I thought that was really profound. And it's something we've been taught since we were young. It's something our pastors have taught us, our youth pastors have taught us, our Sunday school teachers have taught us, something our parents taught us for those who grew up in the church and grew up in a Christian home. but it just lands different when it comes from somebody who actually accomplished it all. It's one thing to receive it from your dad who didn't reach that level of success, or hear it from your pastor who's struggling to make ends meet, right? It's a whole nother thing when somebody's got it all and says, nah, fam, yeah, like this success cannot be your God. Money cannot be your God. Your mansion cannot be your God. And that was really, I love that Will Smith reflected on that. Did you have any thoughts on that, Parker?
Yeah, I thought that as well, that I do think when it comes from someone who's actually done it, you receive it well. But I also think listen, man, we build it.
I was like, yo, people want to see you, dog.
Right, man, you know what I'm saying? But I think the other thing too is that as I was listening to him, I remember Drake saying, like, I think he got a Grammy or some type of award, and him being like, this doesn't matter. He's holding it in his hand. I'm like, dog, you're saying that, but you're holding it, cuz. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I think that there is still this wrestle of, I need to discover this for myself.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so while I was listening, that's something that I felt, because I do think, like, people will say things like, money can't buy happiness, which I think I might disagree with. But also I think, like,
it does buy some level of happiness.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's a song that says, money can't buy happiness, but I wouldn't mind crying in a Lambo. And so I think there is truth in the fact that, like, yes, at the end of everything, you still have to look inward.
Right.
I do think it can be challenging to do that when there are material things that still have to be taken care of. Like, it's easier to figure out what your life purpose is when your bills are paid. You know what I'm saying? And so I do think that that's a tension that we have to hold, especially as believers. If we have a whole book of someone who has done it all, saying, hey, this is good, but it's meaningless. Don't focus on this. Right. But then to still, like, yeah, I hear you, but I still gotta let me get up a little bit more. And so I think that it's a balance of, like, faith, discernment, wisdom, because I think you don't want to you want to, like, steward things well. You want to be mindful, and you also want to strive, like, for excellence and for greatness and all those types of things, but not to the extent that you feel like wherever you reach isn't enough. Right. And so I feel like there's a tension that we have of being content with what we've been given and what we've worked for and what we've stewarded, while also knowing, like, all right, how can I excel well? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. And, you know, I think this reminds me of an experience I had when I stumbled across a little bit of success, right? I remember it was last year, and we had put out an episode that went viral. And, you know, we are putting up numbers I had never seen before on this platform. Never, ever. Why are you laughing, Parker?
Let me be clear.
Never, ever. Since then, we haven't seen it.
That's what I was really laughing at. I just want to say it.
One and done. You feel me?
Never seen it before, never seen it since then.
My God can. My God will.
Hey.
Amen.
We just haven't seen it yet. Blah, blah, blah,
So, that's an insider. Anyways, we, you know, and I remember when the numbers were climbing on the episode, and we were, you know, experiencing, again, like I said, success we hadn't seen before. Everybody around me was celebrating. Everybody around me was happy, grateful. And I remember that I didn't have the same response. My anxiety grew, and my fears grew. And I was trying to pinpoint it, right? I'm like, at a point in my life where I should be the most excited, at a point in life where I should be celebrating and feeling like all the hard work paid off, I didn't. There was just a sense where I wasn't really taking it in. And I feel like a lot of the reason was because, you know, my thought process was, how can I do this again? Will the next video hit in the same way? Will the next episode hit in the same way? And I think this is like what Will is getting at in his conversation with Lecrae. Like, all right, even when you obtain this level of success, you got to go out and do it again. And I know they talked about the run he had from 2002 to 2008, where it's just like one number one after another number one after another number one after another number one. And you're just wondering, can I do it again? And you're working hard, and you're sacrificing, and you're putting in hours, and you're doing all that you can. And instead of enjoying the success, you end up worshiping the success. Instead of celebrating the success, you end up giving your heart to the success in a way that's unnatural and unhelpful. I think it was Tim Keller who said, you've made your job, vocation, success, an idol when you let failure get to your heart and you let success get to your mind. And I think that we've got to have a better relationship with materialistic success, with materialism, with the number game. And I think that as we do that, we could really enjoy life in the way that God has called us to enjoy life. And so, man, kudos to Will, though, saying it on the level that he's at.
Yeah. And I think something, too, I remember when after that Jackie episode, so we had the main episode, then we kind of chopped it up, and we had a couple different episodes that were hitting like 20, 30, 40. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And then I remember after that, there would be videos that would hit maybe like 300-400.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being like, man, we only got like 400. But there was a time probably like 2 weeks before where like when we'd hit like 100, we're like, whoa, hey, run the check.
We
like,
made it.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I think it happens like super, like you don't even notice it. Like as soon as you get exposed to it, you're just like, I gotta hit 65. I was like, yo, you have like 300 people that like, if we put 300 people in a room, most people are gonna get scared to talk.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so I think
that's
that,
a good
like,
point.
To that point too, you don't even always notice when that switch happens. You know what I'm saying? Like as soon as you like have that achievement, sometimes you just are, to your point, you're just like, all right, how can I do it again? It's like, yo, you had a major feat that you've been trying to hit for years. Some people even a lifetime.
Right.
But as soon as you get it, your next thought isn't like, wow, I did it. It's like, now I got to do it again.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. If you're not careful, you'll let the thing that you are called to celebrate make your heart grow resentful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a dangerous game, man, when you're not looking at what God is doing properly. Yeah. So yeah, we could spend the rest of the time talking about that, but we got some more clips we want to get to. So here's another clip we want to react to.
Now, I still find it interesting because you get to this place where you're able to process all of these things. Most people would just rather stay like drunk in the
in the drunken carnival.
Yeah, exactly, right? And even as I'm listening to the song with Big Sean, Beautiful Scars, right?
Yes.
In the promo, you did the Matrix kind of recap and relive the which that's another conversation in and of itself. I would be brokenhearted if I was the person that passed up. But anyway, but you were offered 2 pills.
Yeah.
And one is to like, I don't want to have any consciousness of the existential, like the deeper inner work.
Yeah.
And the other is, let's find out what's really going on behind this. You took both.
Took them both, right.
Talk about that a little bit. Like what's
So the idea is you want to be able to walk both realms. You want to be able to completely understand and relate to the nightmare of being trapped in the Matrix.
Okay.
It's the only way you can love somebody. If you can't understand how somebody is suffering when they lose a job, even though you know that job is in the Matrix, even though you know it's about to be the greatest thing that ever happened to them, while they're doubled over and crying on the floor and terrified, you want to be able to relate to that. Then on the other side, you want to know the power that they're going to come into. So you love somebody, and kind of how I've defined love for myself in the past couple of years is being able to help somebody from the nightmare into the highest blissful form of themselves, right? So you got to take both pills. You got to understand both realms in order to be able to truly love.
That's good. That's interesting. So, I mean, in my own personal journey, I went through a series of clinical depression.
Hold on. Brother, if this ain't the gospel.
Yeah.
If this ain't the gospel. So as he was speaking, the first thing that comes to my mind is the story of Lazarus, Mary, and Martha.
Mm.
How Jesus demonstrates that very thing.
Yeah.
He, on one end, is able to meet them where they're at.
Mm.
He's crying with them. He's hurting with them, but he's about to help them.
Yeah.
He's about to do the miracle. He's about to do something that's never been done before. Mm-hmm. And before, it's not like as Jesus was weeping, as Jesus was mourning, it dawned on him that like he was going to resurrect Lazarus. Mm-hmm. No. He knew that Lazarus was going to come back from the dead. Yeah. Yet and still, he was able to tap into where they were. And I love how he said that is one of the greatest acts of love. Yeah. It's to sit with the pain, sit with the hurt, sit with the tears, and mourn with those who mourn. Mm-hmm. But then you don't just stop there. Love is also helping them achieve whatever it is that they're called to achieve. And I think we do a poor job of like, typically if we have the power to help someone, we don't mourn with them. Mm. Yeah. And then like, if we don't have the resources to help them, all we do is mourn with them. Yeah. But love isn't just, let me cry with you. And for someone who's like, but I don't have the resources. Well, like, presence is a resource, the ministry of, like doing all that we can to walk with that person to get to all that God has called them to be. And I think that right there, he's talking about something that Jesus does so well. Yeah. I love how Hebrews teaches us that we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with us, right? We have a God who is able to not just redeem us, save us, rescue us. We also have a God who can sit with us and say, I feel you. Yeah. Like, I get it, dog. Like I was in that temptation with you. Yeah. The difference between you and I is I didn't succumb to that temptation. However, I feel your pain. Like I know what it's like to want to respond in anger, to respond in lust, to want to respond in self-deprecating acts and behave. Like I get it. I was there. I was tempted in the same way. I feel you, right? Like Jesus came because of love. Like for God so loved the world that he sent his son, right? Yeah. And so I love how Jesus, the Bible actually says that right now, he's seated at the right hand side of the Father, interceding for you and I. And his there's a level of grace, there's a level of power, there's a level of humility, there's a level of understanding in his intercession of us because he walked this life. He lived as we lived. He cried the tears that we cried. He was hungry as if we were hungry. He's been betrayed the way we get betrayed. He's been misunderstood the way we've been misunderstood. He's had people walk away from his life the way people have walked away from our lives. He has had things happen to him that he wouldn't want to have happened. Like, Father in the garden, take this cup away from me. He's demonstrating like he knows what it's like to want something specific, but have to ultimately submit to what the Father wills for his life, right? And so in so many ways, what Will's talking about is this gospel presentation. Like this is what makes Jesus different than Allah. This is what makes Jesus different than Buddha. This is what makes Jesus different than all these other religious figures and leaders. Like Jesus doesn't just call us to this standard. Jesus doesn't just call us higher, but Jesus sits with us and understands what it is that holds us back from achieving greater.
Yeah. And I think, bro, I'm like halfway through the interview, right?
Yeah.
I feel like we'll probably get to this. I feel like Will, it almost sounds like he knows the truth. Yeah. But he doesn't want to think it's the truth. I don't know what his rationale is, but he'll say all these things where I'm just like, oh yeah, he'll talk about Ecclesiastes. He'll present the gospel. He'll talk about like loving people the way they need to be loved. Yeah. Showing your humanity to people. Yeah. I'm just like, okay, lay the plate. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like he's just like, I'm curious to see where he's going to land as he continues to talk about faith, because I'm like, bro, you have it in you. Yeah. Like you have like the foundational pieces. It sounds like you have like the functional pieces, but I'm like, just bring it together.
What's not clicking?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like flip the switch, cuz.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, let's keep watching. It's there. He's right there. I'm with you on that. Because I think here, Cray asks him what his like religion is, if I'm not mistaken. So let's keep watching.
I'm at the lowest point in my life where the outside world will say, "What are you talking? You got everything.
Yes.
What are you talking about?" But I came out of that with a different sense of empathy.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Right. It was like I would not know that didn't satisfy if I didn't experience it. But I also would not be empathetic had I not just gone through the lowest of lows.
Absolutely.
And then could see how much inner work I needed to do. So I kind of see.
Yeah, it's like it is from being in the heart of your difficulty is how your eyes get deep when you look at somebody and they're in theirs. Right? People can tell you get it because you've been vomited on your bathroom floor. So you know what that's like. It's you know, unfortunately or fortunately, it's like broken hearts are how we cultivate loving hearts.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Say that again.
Yes, broken hearts are how we cultivate loving hearts. From being doubled over, you get a deep understanding of the human predicament. You know what it's like to be crippled with fear or pain. And through your path of recovering from that is how you reach back for others.
Yeah.
If you've never been there, you can't help nobody.
Wow. That's really good. I'm curious because
this is what we talking about.
You see what I'm saying?
We hear.
Like I feel like he got the pieces.
He's got the ingredients.
Yeah. Just do the thing, put it in the oven, just have the outcome. You know what I'm saying?
That was wise, bro. What do you say? It's broken hearts that lead to loving hearts? Something like that. That's a bar. Empathy.
And the fact that he had to do everything he did to come to that conclusion. Right. That's the crazy part. That's what I'm still stuck on. Is that you had to win the Grammys, the awards, the Oscars, slap Chris Rock, do the whole bit to realize like these types of things. You know what I'm saying?
He's about to actually. It's not just. I think the slap also led to his.
Oh, for sure.
Humility and I'll just play the clip because
There are. I mean, we live in an era now where people are, at least in person, trying to be very tolerant of one another. Yeah. Online is a different story.
Yeah, for sure.
Online is a different story. Yeah. You have, your journey has been interesting, right? From childhood to today. Yeah. And there are spiritual undertones in there. Yeah. You know, you were raised in the church, but at the same time, you've been out in different areas of the world where you've seen like, whoa, I never had this. Oh, I'm enlightened to this culture and these particular things. You weren't afraid of intolerance by referencing your church roots. Right. Because some people would say, whoa, man, I don't want that. Why was there no fear there?
You know,
that's a great question by Lecrae. Yeah. Fire question.
My personal belief is, you know, I was raised, you know, with an Old Testament grandmother. Right. You know, so Gigi. Yeah. You know, so my way and my deepest understanding is biblical. You know, but I've read the Quran from cover to cover. Yeah. During Ramadan 2 years ago. Yeah. You know, I read the Bhagavad Gita from cover to cover. I read the teachings of the Buddha. So, you know, if I had to say what my religion is, I would take the Muhammad Ali quote, and my religion is love. Right? I believe in the oneness and the possibility of harmony between people who are all reaching for the one truth.
hold on, before he gets into that line, I want to address that comment.
Yeah.
My religion is love.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I got to give props to Will. I think he's genuinely a truth seeker. For him to read the Quran cover to cover, that's pretty impressive. I don't know too many Muslims doing that, let alone people who don't subscribe to that faith.
Yeah.
And I've seen that throughout his journey. You've seen it in his interviews. You've seen it in his conversations. You've seen it in I read his book, which is phenomenal. Probably one of my favorite autobiographies I've ever read. You could tell he's looking for truth. He's seeking truth. However, when he says my religion is love, here's why I celebrate that. And here's why I'm a little distressed by that. Right. I celebrate that because I do think that's ultimately how Jesus sums up Christianity.
For sure.
He says, if you want to know what this faith is about, he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Yeah. So Jesus sums up the law by saying love. If love covers a multitude of sin, right? Yeah. So if I love my neighbor, I will not steal from my neighbor. Right. If I love my neighbor, I will not murder my neighbor. If I love my neighbor, I will not covet the things of my neighbor, right? And so in a lot of ways, love is what helps us live the life that God has ultimately called us to live. You can't sin against people when you're loving them, right? So I celebrate that. But the reason why I'm a little like, wait a minute, is because I think in our culture, we celebrate love, right? I think about J. Cole, love yours, love is the answer. Yeah. And here's what I will say. Love cannot be God, but God is love. And there's a difference. When love is God, you have no parameters around what love can and cannot look like, or what love should look like. But when God is love, you have God determining what love is and what love looks like. And it's like we just talked about, it's demonstrated in the life of Jesus. If you want to know what love looks like, look at the life of Jesus. And Will already brilliantly articulated, hey, it's empathy. It's being able to mourn with those who mourn, but then to be able to help them achieve greater, get to their destination, get to their desired outcome, right? And there's so much more to love, but like Jesus demonstrates so many things for us. But I do think that we have to be careful because it's subtle, but it makes a world of a difference. Yeah. So I would want to hear more from Will on what he meant by my religion is love, because I could so easily hear a Christian saying the same thing. If we're giving it the right parameters, right? If what we mean by love being our religion is that like God has called us to love him and to love others, yes and amen. Because in that there are parameters. And if you love God first, your love for God will impact how you love others. And that's what 1 John is teaching us. John says, how do you claim to love an invisible God if you don't love your visible brothers, right? It's a cause and effect. You can't have one without the other. And what gives definition to love, what gives parameters around love, what gives boundaries to love, what gives definition to love is Jesus, is the Father, is his heart, you know, and so in the same way, because the moment love becomes God, well then like what if one person doesn't define love to be this thing, or what if somebody else says love ought to look like this? Then at what like who are we submitting to? Who's calling the shots on what love is? What does love look like? Right? I remember growing up when my dad would discipline me. He before he would belt me, I grew up getting spanked, but before he would spank me, every single time, what I appreciate about my dad is he never disciplined me it wasn't reactionary. It was always thought through. And he would sit me down and he would say, I love you, and this is why I'm doing this. This hurts me more than it hurts you, and I'm doing this because I want to correct this behavior, and I believe that you're called to better. Every single time, right? Every single time before he spanked us. And so in that moment, he was showing me, out of his love for me, he had to discipline me to uproot some things in my life that would ultimately lead to my destruction.
Yeah.
Some would look at that and say it's unloving to discipline.
Sure.
Well, who calls the shots on what love is and what love isn't? And that's why we have to look to God is love, and God shows us what love ought to look like, right? And so that's where I like celebrate, but like I have a little bit of concern there, like what we need to be. I wish I heard more from him on what he meant by that.
Sure.
I just don't know. I'm assuming here, but that's what I would. Yeah.
And I think if your definition of love is incorrect, you can also conflate love with tolerance or blanket acceptance of something. And so I think that when he talks about love, what it sounds like is he's saying like he appreciates like how he grew up, but he's also more accepting of these other things that he's discovered as he's traveled, as he's read the Quran, as he's read the teachings of Buddha. He's like, okay, I can accept these types of things under the guise of love. And I think while an aspect of love is being willing to engage in something or sit with something or have a conversation or to a degree entertain, that doesn't mean that you accept it as truth or say, oh, your truth can be your truth and my truth can be my truth. Love also calls you to correct, to confront, to have difficult conversations, to call people higher, to pull people out of things. And so I think that when you say, that's kind of what I thought of similarly, like you were saying, like when I hear love is my religion, I think, okay, if that's the basis of, because that is the basis of Christian faith and what God calls us to do, absolutely. But I think to say like, oh, just love everybody, because I think most people don't have the same definition of love, especially when we talk about people who would subscribe to being a disciple of Jesus versus a seeker of truth or just someone who's looking to, even like he said, like the oneness aspect. I'm like, there's elements of truth in that we're all searching for something. We're all made for something. There's something within inside of us that's looking for something greater. But people are going to arrive differently at what that answer is, depending on if they're saying, I'm a follower of Christ and this is what I believe that thing is, versus, well, it just kind of depends on, I don't know. Like, let me just, let's seek it out. You know what I'm saying? So,
No, that's good. That's good reflection. But ultimately that should be the Christian's, it's love, right? 100%. Like and that's what Jesus says. He sums up the law in that way. But I wish he unpacked that a little bit more. But he's going to get into his journey here about like how he was humbled. So I want to also jump into that a little bit.
Yeah.
We're just a room full of sinners reaching for the Holy Ghost.
Yeah.
And I just love that line, because everybody wants to hold on to some kind of comparative superiority.
For sure.
And what has been beautiful for me in the past couple of years is the loss of my illusion of moral superiority.
Like you're better than everyone else.
being humbled into the place that I'm not better than nobody.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's like it's so beautiful. It's brutal. It's brutal. It's brutal. It's brutal and beautiful.
Okay.
Right.
That's intriguing.
Yeah.
That's actually very intriguing. Because if you got ears to hear, you know what's being said. And what I hear you saying is that up until a while back, you probably thought you were made out of Teflon.
Yeah, I certainly always joke with my family, and they don't think it's funny. I was like, I'm King David. I'm God's man. God likes me, y'all. Just admit it. No, but it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. You've been humanized in a lot of ways.
And settled down into the connective. The only place you can really meet somebody and have authentic compassion is when you recognize the sameness.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I heard a quote. I'm not exactly sure who said it, but I'll claim it as my own.
Yeah,
but
that's the 3 repeat rule.
3 repeat.
You 3 repeat. When you repeat something one time, you say, somebody said.
Yep.
And the second time you say, I don't remember who said it. And then the third time you repeat, like I always say.
Like I always say. Like I've said twice before. Like I've said a couple times. But is that our highest call is to be human.
Yes.
Not less than human and not superhuman.
Right.
But to be human and to humanize one another.
To be it all, to recognize that you're it all. That, it's only by the grace of God that you don't find yourself on one side or the other in a war zone. Because who knows what you would do if people that you loved were being threatened. And it's only by the grace of God that you don't have to make that choice. Right? And that's what I recognized, is I am in a blessed scenario. But if I were in another scenario, is my spiritual commitment strong enough to not do things that I talk about other people for doing?
That's good.
What would I do if I was there?
Yeah.
If Willow was on one side of a line and somebody was tripping on the other side, what would I do?
And that's the beautiful thing about grace, right? Is that you have to have a sense of you've got to put yourself in someone else's shoes.
Yeah.
You got to be able to look at somebody else and say, you know what?
I think that it's so funny. The Bible says, humble yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you don't humble yourself, God has a way of humbling you. And brother, let me tell you, I have learned over the years, I would rather humble myself than have the Lord humble me.
Because when he does it.
Bro, it was the slap that was heard around the world.
Oh my God.
It was the slap that was heard on national television. You feel me? And what I love about what he's saying, though, is that he's now in a place where he doesn't think he's like God's right-hand man.
Yeah.
It's like, dang, like I'm not as great as I think I am. Bro, this is the gospel 101. Like, you can't come to Christ until you've come to the end of yourself.
Yeah.
It's only in recognizing you're human. It's only in recognizing that you are broken. It's only in recognizing that if it had not been for the grace of God, like he said, if I had been in a different context, if I had been in a different situation, if I had been dealt a different hand of cards, like, who knows? Yeah. And even with the cards that I have been dealt, I don't think I handle that the best all
I
the
barely
time.
do that.
I barely do that. Right? And bro, like, it's just so comforting to hear someone like talk about like, yo, part of the reason why I have empathy and part of the reason why I'm able to make a connection with others is because now I can see myself in them. Yeah. I don't think I'm better than them. I don't think I'm less than them, but I certainly don't think I'm better than them. Yeah. Like, I might not struggle in the way they struggle, but man, I've got my own demons. I might not talk like them, but man, I got some things I'm ashamed of, some things that I'm wrestling through. And shout out to Lecrae for like recognizing where the conversation was going, picking up the things that Will's putting down, and throwing a question his way, or like making an observation that Will could riff on. Yeah. And I think that what Will is saying is something that I think our generation needs to hear. It's like, you're not Superman, bro. Yeah. Like, you're not, like, you are at the mercy of God, and all that you have is a gift from God, and you don't control anything. I love the example he gave. If he was on the other side of the world, would I be the person that I'm judging? Right? And I think that we, as Christians especially, we lack that nuance. And that doesn't mean that the standard changes. Yeah. It doesn't mean that the call shifts. It just helps us understand our predicament. And it helps us now relate with people in a way that I think we ought to relate with others. Yeah. I remember when I was in college, like I used to struggle with this idea of forgiveness, and I, in no way, shape, or form do I feel like I've mastered forgiveness in my life. But one thing that really rocked me in college was God showing me how much he's forgiven me. And it's like, dog, like, how can I sin day in and day out, sin against God, drop the ball, do the things that he doesn't love, tell him I love him with my lips, but in my heart, like live a completely like different reality. And then when somebody wants to like not invite me to their birthday party, now we beefing, you know what I'm saying? And like, how dare, like, God has forgiven me of more than I would ever have to forgive anyone of. It's not even close, bro. And I think that as I have come into a greater realization of my humanity, as God in his kindness has allowed me to see me, it has impacted the way I see others and relate to others. And I think it's so crucial, bro. Like, how could you be puffed up and arrogant when you know your need, when you know you're desperate, when you know you're human? And how could you think you're better than somebody else if you understand, like, if the standard is Christ? Baby. If God is the standard, it doesn't matter how far I get, I'll always come up short. And if I'm always coming up short, how dare I think I'm better than somebody else who's falling short?
And I feel like the only way you really understand that is when you go through something like that. Like there have been times where I've had something in my teeth, something on my face, something on my shirt, and you walking around acting like everything is everything, and people are kind of looking at you like, hey, you might want to, look in the mirror. And so I think even with that, like now, like when I see something I try to do, this is stupid, but it's connected. It's not stupid, but it's it's minuscule. But like if I see somebody that got something in their teeth, I'm just like, hey, just watch out there. Oh, thank you. I was about to go do whatever because I know what it's like to feel like you just got it going on. Something's cool, and it's just a little thing that's making you look like, hey, bro, you don't know what you're doing. And so you have to work to be like, yo, I'm not better than I can get God just like anybody else. And so I think I was joking with a friend a while back, and we were talking about I don't remember the exact topic, but we were saying like, there's a reason that God doesn't put us in certain situations because we know how we're going to act. And so I think that is a testament to like, sometimes you're only acting the way that you're acting because you're not in a certain situation. You know what I'm saying? Like if your back is against the wall, there's no telling what you're going to do in order to get out of the situation. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
And so to Will's point, like it is a grace of God that you don't have to face those things. And so, but to take that and then feel like you're better just because your situation happens to be something else. That's not, you're not the distinguishing factor in that. It's God and God alone that decides like how things are going to go.
That's it.
And so, you only recognize, you more often than not truly have an understanding of that when you have experienced like some type of embarrassment, humiliation, situation, difficulty. But like, that's the thing that makes you be like, oh, you know what? Let me calm down a little bit because clearly I'm not who I thought I was. Let me move a little bit. And we even see that in scripture. Like I forget what letter it is, but where Paul talks about consider other people as greater than yourself. Not to say that you're not valuable.
Romans 12,
but just like as you're going about with people going day to day, consider other people and move in such a way where you're supporting them, that you're thinking of them first before yourself. And part of what is included in that is like, you'll know that you're not up here, not that you're not valuable, but don't think that you have the moral high ground, because all of us have fallen short and require grace. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. So, that's a word, bro. That's a word.
I'll put my Cash App right now. You know what
I'm saying? I feel like we can respond more to this stuff, but I think like from here on out, like they get into his music and they get into his motivation behind this album and these other albums that he's about to put out. And, great. You should check out the whole conversation. Great. I just wanted to react to the first half hour of the conversation because my soul was stirred, and it's so beautiful to like see an honest, authentic conversation about faith in a way that was nuanced, in a way that was charitable, in a way that was curious. And I think Lecrae did his big one on that. And so, but I love what God is doing in that man's heart and Will Smith's heart. I love that he's a seeker of truth. And if I'm not mistaken, I think his like first son is a Christian, if I'm not mistaken.
Really?
Yeah. I think I saw that, read that, heard that somewhere. Don't quote me. I might be off, but I'm pretty sure that I think, his first son and first wife are Christian. And so, he's got people in his life, of course. He grew up in the church, like, so he's got friends like Lecrae now, and I'm sure there are other Christians in his world, and so we're just gonna keep praying that God would stir his heart. I know he's Devon Frank, things like that. So but that was dope, man. Lecrae killed it.
He did.
And Will it was
very,
thoughtful,
very much so,
insightful, and funny all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just the cousins that weren't invited wanted to give our 2 cents.
The opinion nobody asked for.
Ain't nobody asked for what Ebenezer thought or what Parker thought. But it's fun, man. I just love the space we're in right now as content creators, where we can react.
It's a good time.
Just like why not react?
Why not?
Why not?
Let's just have a good time.
Let's have a good time. Let's join the conversation. And so I can't wait to see all that God will continue to do in Lecrae and Will's life. Deep End, man, they've been
having some heavy hitters. He's been
killing
his
it.
thing.
He's been killing it. Lecrae, come back on Shaping the Culture, dog.
Let's do it.
Come back on Shaping the Culture. All right. Until next time, family, peace and grace. Shaping the Culture.